All right. Hey, good morning. So we have a few people online, and and we are going to record today. So I have Jew Magic 151 with us again, and we're going to be talking about um, some of the sports betting wins that we had on the site last week, some of the recommendations and stuff that have been put out, and also some stuff going forward, and as always, some money management stuff. So I'll pass it over to him.
Good morning and happy Saturday. Um, yeah, I'm gonna talk about a couple things from last week just to revisit. Last week we talk about when we win the press, the withdrawal. Last week was 9 plays, so with 9 plays, we're thinking of 5 and 4. Well, we got a nice kiss, and it was the picks were 6 and 3. So now that 25% press each week, that's a bigger dollar amount on a 6 and 3 week. I said it a couple weeks ago. That week is coming, and but we're planning for the 5 and 4 week. So hopefully everybody got a nicer cash out last week and a much nicer press going into this week. Um, as long as we're staying with that even betting strategy, we're winners. Couple things we learned last week, at least I learned, I hope everybody else did. There's some teams you got to be aware of, and you got to be it's a weird season for college right now, and I just want to caution everybody with the SEC right now. I think everybody learned a valuable lesson on that Oklahoma State game. I think we all went into it real hard, and it took the rest of the day to fix it and play itself out. But the SEC these are the games and the teams that everybody wants to watch. But there's some big spreads out there on teams that we think are going to cover. I'm just saying, a lot of this it's risk management more so than it is playing the right game. But you look at SEC and it's Texas A&M a 30-point favorite, Bama 29-point favorite, Georgia with a new quarterback 27.5 point. I mean, these are big spreads. I say stay away, even though these are the entertaining games that we want to watch. I would stay away from them. It's just risk. There's other games that you can find money on, and I got a couple questions throughout the week, and I want to talk a little bit about over unders. Um, Here's how I feel about over unders. I never bet them. I never bet them pre-game. I'll look at them going in, but rather than the total number for the game, I like to break it down to the half and sometimes the team for the first half. And it's there's teams that you got to really be careful with on the over under, but the in-game spread on the first half can be really profitable because you can feel out the game. And if you win the half, well, then you go back into the second half. What I'll say for the second half is if you got a blowout, 40-0, I would be careful going into that second half because that team's going to pump the brakes. If you have two teams that are just fighting it out and they're on pace to hit the over, you probably got a winner there. It can make money if you bet it pregame, but I don't think there's a reason to because you can catch the in game, and I think again to the risk management piece of it, and I think about the blackjack table. I think we've all been to a casino. And in a lot of casinos, in the gift shop, they have this hit stick card. It's like a little card that tells you if the dealer has this and you have that, what to hit and what to stick. And if you sit at the table with 5 people that only bet the same thing every single hand, never press, just stay the same, and you follow this card, you're going to end up beating the casino. And I think that it translates very well to what we're trying to do with the even betting and risk elimination. At the blackjack table, that risk is when you feel it on one hand. You bet triple the amount that you were normally betting or triple the amount of the table minimum, and you end up losing that hand, and now all these winnings just goes away to nothing. So think about that when you're looking at these over unders. I'll tell you, there's some teams that I always find to be a risk for covering spreads and over unders: K-State, TCU, BYU. And I bring up TCU because the last I looked at the spread, I think that they were it was like 3 points, and they were actually getting the points. TCU is a team that coach will take a knee. They can win 66-0. They can win by 3, and they just don't care. I would say stay away from State, even though K-State against Oklahoma, I call them Choklahoma, but that one seems like an easy one, but I would stay away from it. BYU is another one. They grind. They make other teams look bad. They cover when they shouldn't. They lose by more or less than they should. These are just very risky plays, and if you can take it out of what you're looking at for the week, you're going to end up managing some risk. The other thing I want to talk about, I got some good comments, both in my text and on the page about injuries and what they're actually worth. And so I started digging in, and I'm looking at players and just seeing what I can find out about what players are worth, because there's a lot of injuries right now in the NFL. And this is crazy. I dug into the running back further than I did anything else. But what I came up with is the running back is worth 0 points. Your star running back, I wouldn't consider that worth anything as far as a point spread goes. The math that I came up with is last year, the top 50, the 50 running backs, the top 50 running backs in the NFL, they represented 5.12 touchdowns per season. That translates to 0.32 of a touchdown each game. When you look at it that way, I don't think the running back's worth anything. And then you look at the best running backs in the league, chances are they're playing with one of the best O-lines in the league, which means the backup is probably just as good. So the star quarterback, you look at, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, that guy can be worth up to a touchdown. You start to look at wide receivers, and some of the things that I've read, the wide receiver can be worth a couple points. Now, a star on defense like Von Miller for Denver, that can be 3 or 4 points. So you look at that, and that's exactly why you keep playing against Denver. Bet against Denver at every opportunity this season, because they've lost so much on defense, and now a quarterback. I think that's a safe play, no matter how you look at it. But I thought it was a good question. Just about some of these players. I wouldn't get caught up in some of these injuries that are going on. I think the team philosophy is what's going to carry. I wouldn't take injuries other than Mahomes, Russell Wilson, star quarterback. Those are the only injuries I would really take seriously as far as what that looks like on a spread or an investment for the game. What else was I going to say? I mean, I don't really have a ton for this week. I wanted to hit on those points and just throw out some caution for some of these teams, these games that we want to watch, but I just don't think that they're safe investments this week. I don't know. What do you got, Rob?
No, I thought the injury piece was good. So do you put any, and I know we talked about this a little bit before, but do you put any stake into the whole fantasy play into the bets at all then?
Well, again, the fantasy play, you're looking at players, and you're trying to figure out what your player is going to do. So the thought process in a fantasy is completely different than looking at spreads and tendencies. I spent a lot of time looking at this Army Cincinnati game. I'm just going to use it for an example, and I dug in. I dug all the way back on the head coach for Cincinnati and looking at what he does against specific types of teams. And does he cover? What does he do against different conferences? What did he do as a D coordinator when he was at Ohio State? And that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at. I'm not really too concerned, and I know I'm talking about a college team and what I broke down, but I'm not really too concerned with, is Zeke Elliott going to score a couple touchdowns today? I'm more concerned with, can Dallas score points and contain Seattle? And can they keep it within 5? And what did they do the last time they played them? And the coaching matchups and the travel and things like that. None of that breakdown has anything to do with one player actually scoring points. You can have a fantasy player on a losing team. Last year, Jameis Winston was the number 2 fantasy quarterback as far as points. And we all know what happened with Tampa last year. They won nothing. They got nowhere. But the quarterback lit it up. He had all kinds of points, and some people would call Tampa a good team last year because they had a great quarterback as far as fantasy production. So it's a separate thing. I play DraftKings on usually for the Monday night game or the Sunday night game, just uh, just to have a small deal going on. I play it for a dollar or two, but I'm not spending hours breaking down that game. I don't think it's any different than a coin flip or putting a token in a slot machine. It's just up to how the game unfolds.
Well, I
It's
guess let me clarify that because here's my thought process, and so what I see is a lot of people aren't very sophisticated gamblers, and they like fantasy. A lot of them, and then they like throwing $50 on the same team, and a lot of people are betting on the same stuff that they're doing in fantasy. And so what I think happens is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't that change the pricing action on some of the lines and some of the odds that you're actually getting? Isn't that a possibility?
it. I'm sure it is. I mean, I don't see, and I don't think any of us see data on the profile of the person that's betting and where the heavy wagers are and how that moves lines. But I would assume it is. And
I, I,
some
I just don't know. I honestly don't know how it can. And I'm actually, just kind of wondering, almost kind of like how when we get so excited about like options, for instance, on something like Tesla, everyone's excited about it. We were talking about this earlier. And all of a sudden the pricing goes crazy, for those options on, Tesla. But it's kind of the same thing. They get, so excited about a team or a certain player. And so they'll push the lines on certain things, and if there's enough people doing it, and with all the, I guess, push towards DraftKings and all this other stuff, it's got to start pushing the lines. And if that can maybe give us a little bit of a competitive edge, is something to at least look at.
I think it does. And as you're talking, I'm thinking of this analogy. We mess with stocks and options all week long, and this group is pretty educated investors. And we've seen in the stock market the last couple months the Robinhood traders push lines, the cruise lines, Nikola. I mean, we can name 10 different stocks and the way that it moves the market and how to read it. Well, I think it's kind of the same with fantasy, or with fantasy to regular wagers. It's You got a fantasy guy he's looking at this Dallas Seattle game and saying, well, wait a minute, they got Zeke, they got Lamb, they got Dak. I just, and nobody knows the names of the players on Seattle because they got so many key players that don't have these big household names. So you probably got your Robinhood investor, your fantasy player, leaning towards Dallas, while you look at that game and the guy that's digging in and doing the work on the company or on that particular team, they see something completely different than the Robinhood investor that's just, let's just put money into Carnival Cruise, even though they're not cruising right now.
We might have to do a deep dive into some uh, some lines and figure out if fantasy is pushing it.
Yeah, and you can see when the sharp money hits. The sharp money, from what I've seen, usually hits on Wednesday, Thursday, sometimes Friday. But you can see when there's huge money put down on a game and the odds shift. And the Buffalo game, somebody hit the Rams real hard. Uh, Went right when it opened because it was minus 130 for the Rams payout, and Buffalo was plus 110 for the points. I love Buffalo in the game, but somebody put a ton of money on the game to start it off. But then it shifted, and I think now the game is minus 110 on both sides. So that means that somewhere throughout the week, money was put on the Rams and it shifted, or I'm sorry, money was put on Buffalo and it shifted the odds. And it's kind of like that unusual option activity. If you see somebody out there putting enough money to move lines or move option prices, that's worth a look. But throughout the week, early in the week, I love looking for just irregular point spreads and payoffs and odds. And um, I put up that video, or I put up that recording with my buddy Second Half Chaz. He does a great show every week, and we had talked a little bit, and one of the things that I had said is in that Buffalo and Rams game, I took the odds, plus 110. That's a fantastic payout. I like the game already. I just jumped on it. Uh, usually when lines are lopsided like that, you go the opposite. But this one took a swing to where it's now balanced. It's not opposite anymore. It could have been a fantasy player. It could have been just a big sharp with $1 million that shifted the odds.
Yeah, and we all know half a point, a point, it can change the whole dynamic of each bet. So it's just
Yeah,
something to look at, something
it it
interesting to talk about for sure.
yeah, it can. And one of the comments on the page was, well, now it's down to 1.5. Well, I think that's great because I liked it at 3. So if you like it at 3, you still like it at 1.5. So there's really no reason. If anything, that just validates the initial bet, right? I
Do you
was happy to
change
like.
it? Do you ever change your bet or add to it?
So that's a good question, and yes, and this guy second half Chaz, he wrote a book called Betting the Second Half, and he's got a lot of data. He's been doing it for 20 years, and one of the things I learned from him is you go into the game, and we talk about the over under too. You go into a game with no opinion, let the first couple plays play out, and then you look at it, but you bet the first half or you bet a team on to either win the first half or you bet the first half over. It's a blowout at 50-0. Clemson, good example. Blowout 50-0. Won the second half. I took Citadel. And I took the 52 points. And what happened? It was cash. So you can actually place multiple bets on the same game. You could be on Clemson in the first half and they win and cover. And then at that point, you're like, okay, now I'm going to take the other guy. And so you could just watch the game and bet on two different teams, two different halves, even four different quarters, and win on the shift. In some cases, almost every time when I see a 13-point favorite and the other team scores first and now it drops down to 6, you take the favorite because they were a favorite by 13 and now it's 6. So you can you can bet on the opposite team multiple times within the same game and get paid. And there's multiple examples of how that plays out. So yeah, I'll switch mid game, but I won't do it pre-game. The bulk of the investment comes in the middle of the game when you feel it out, you know where it's going, and it could be a snap, it could be a run, it could be an interception, whatever it is that you see. My favorite is when I'm at a game because you can jump on it before anything online has a chance to make their adjustments. I don't know what the delay time is, but I would imagine it's 10 seconds or so. I highly doubt that Bovada or any of these betting sites have people sitting at the game in real time. So that's my favorite to jump on. I'm sitting at Arrowhead and you see the Chiefs with an interception, boom, just drop more money on whatever you like within that game, keeping it even with the rest of the bets for the week. But if you can beat the actual adjustment, you're in a good place.
All right. Well, that turned into a pretty interesting conversation. All right, so we'll look at that a little bit more, and we'll follow up on that. So I don't know if Mohammed sent you up because he's a friend of yours, but he asked a question, and I know you don't like answering it, but thoughts on the Ravens Chiefs game?
So in the recording, the show that I gave the picks on earlier in the week, I said you can look at it two ways. That Chiefs game last week is the absolute definition of a trap game, and if nobody's heard of a trap game, you should make that a part of your strategy when you're looking at your games. A trap game is when you got a team playing a lesser opponent, but next week is the big game. And in most cases, that can be a point spread trap. You got a very small point spread, and it just seems like the easiest money on earth because they should blow this team away. You got to look at who they're playing next week because in most cases they're not going to put everything into it because they're thinking about next week. So with the Chiefs last week, they're playing the Chargers, which I think the game spread was 8.5 to start the game, and the Chiefs had to win by kicking a field goal when it was over. San Diego played up for that game, so I really think that San Diego, or I'm sorry, the L.A. Chargers. I think that they're going to have a rough game this week because they put everything into that Chiefs game. But if you look at the Chiefs, they were probably overlooking the Chargers, and they were thinking about this week. So if you look at it that way, the Chiefs are going to show up and play, and they're gonna win. But knowing the Chiefs as well as I do, I think that everything the that the Ravens do is very difficult for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have amazing pass defense. They sack the quarterback, they can intercept the ball. They're very good on defense in that regard. But the only way that they're playing against a team that's passing is if they jump out on top. I think that Baltimore, their running game is impossible for the Chiefs to stop. It is going to be completely impossible. They got two really good running backs, one that can grind, and they both have speed. They got a quarterback that can take it to the house at any moment. So I think that the Chiefs are going to really struggle against the run. And as much as I hate to say it, and I'll be wearing a Honey Badger jersey watching the game. I think that Baltimore wins. I think that it wouldn't surprise me if they win by 10, if they win by two touchdowns. I think this is going to be a very ugly reality check for the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to be able to defend Baltimore.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking if he set you up for this question or not. I wasn't
No,
sure.
well, well, he likes the Ravens. I mean, we're both Chiefs fans. He likes the Ravens, but it's going to be a great game to watch. I just the more you break it down, the Chiefs' running defense has not changed, and the Chiefs can't run the ball. I know everybody likes this. Everybody likes the rookie, and I do too. But the guy is 5'8". He is not going to grind 3 yards at a time. He's there to help the passing game, short passing. I mean that's his deal. The Chiefs lost their starting running back from the Super Bowl to COVID, and they're not going to be able to run the ball and kill the clock. And the Chiefs have been awful on first and second down this year. So they're putting themselves in third and long situations against a really good Baltimore defense. So that's a that game I not really going to enjoy watching it as a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, but it should be a good game as a football fan. So
Yeah.
take a
Yep.
look at that. We're gonna keep this short, and I don't really have much else going on, so I'm gonna get out there and enjoy the weekend, and I hope everyone else does the same. Unless you have anything else.
I don't. If anybody else has something else, I don't. Let's cash some tickets.
I said cash tickets, and just for anybody else, we are gonna go live on Monday morning in the premium channel for basically my normal market analysis. But I am gonna be talking about Katie's reports that was asked. For me to do. So I'll talk about some of the data that I get out of there, and basically, I think I'm going to go into what I look at every morning and kind of I- I'll just call it like that. Morning routine that I do about an hour before the trading day starts, and specifically, for trading the averages, the indices, and just doing normal scalping stuff, and how I get like my basic market direction stuff based off some of the premium data that we have on Discord, and basically what I look at because this whole page and this whole Discord thing is based off of my what I originally wanted for my trading stuff, and it's evolved into more than that now on some of the deep dive trades and stuff like that. But we're going to talk about premium data and stuff like that, and what we look at, and specifically the Katie's reports and some of the future stuff that I use to start my day out. And anyone who's followed for any for any amount of time knows that first half an hour, first 15 minutes of trading is usually where I make most of my money. So stand by for that, and we'll talk on Monday. All right. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.